Right, so it's June 22nd at just after 1 p.m. in the afternoon. We're in the MCC at the Diefenbunker, and I'm talking to Mike Green. So to just get started, could you describe a little bit about what your job entailed as a teletype technician?
My job was to repair the various teletype machines that were here. At that time, it was mainly the model, the British Creed, and it was a nightmare, all wires and springs. It was a nightmare to keep operational. I did spend some time in Strad maintenance, and I also did about 8 months downstairs in the Federal Warning Center, working on the projectors that they had down there at the time.
Mm-hmm. So you were located in a few different areas in the bunker?
Yes, yes. My main area, though, was down this hallway here, in the teletype shop, and of course swapping out the units in the message center and message relay. So.
And was there anywhere in the bunker that you weren't allowed to go?
About 85 to 90% of the place I wasn't allowed to go, because while everybody had the clearances to be in here, there were varying degrees of it, but you pretty well had to have top secret to be in here at that time. But the policy was such that if you had no need to be in a hallway or in an area, you didn't go there. And the badges indicated by different colored stripes whether you were allowed in an area or not. And every time you came to a door, if you didn't have the right color to go in through that door, you didn't go. And if you did, somebody would stop you and find out what you were doing there.
Did you ever hear about that happening?
It would happen on occasion all the time. People just not thinking where they're going and walk through the door, but nobody ever really got too far. And basically there was no intention to deceive or cause problems or anything else. It was, when you came here, you were told that you told the line or you'd be in trouble and gone. And I think pretty well about 99% of the people were very careful what they did and where they went and what they said.
When you first got this job posted at the bunker, what were your first thoughts? It was, as compared to the position that you had before.
Well, I had just spent a year and a half, 2 years up at Petawawa with the 2 SIGs Regiment. And I decided, because they were having problems with their teletype machines, and I was a teletype operator at that time, I said, well, maybe we should think about getting me on a Teletype Technician course. And at that time, they sent me down to, all this paperwork takes time. Anyhow, they sent me to Kingston on trades training. And it was during that time that the amalgamation of the armed forces took place. And there I sat as a corporal because I really didn't belong to anybody. I was taken off strength with the 2 SIGs Regiment because they wanted to promote their own people. They didn't promote anybody in the school because you were there as a student, and temporarily attached to CARP here. They weren't going to promote me. They never even seen me, let alone knew anything about me. So there I sat. Anyway, so I ended up my career, 15 years later, still at the same rank. But there's a lot more to that story than just that.
So when you started working here, What was sort of a typical day for you at the bunker? Did you live here or did you live off site?
No. I brought my wife because I was married at the time, and I was married up in Petawawa. We had one son who was born in Pembroke, and then when we moved down here to Ottawa, we lived in Bayshore, and I drove back and forth to work. So my wife stayed in town. I come out here, whatever, depending on what shift I was on for the first while, and I think the majority of the time I was on straight days, Monday to Friday. And that made you come in here at 8 o'clock in the morning. You had to be here ready to go to work at 8, not come strolling in at 8 or 10 after 8. And go into the shop, usually have a coffee downstairs shortly there. If you got here early enough, you could go for a coffee. Then be upstairs ready to work at 8. At coffee break time, we went downstairs to the mess hall for coffee. And sometimes we had 15, 20 minutes, sometimes a half an hour. And back to work. Lunch was half an hour. And then finish at, lunch was an hour. Lunch was an hour. Because you could have lunch and still slip over the wet canteen for a beer before you went back to work. Did that a few times. And we finished at 4 o'clock, and having your own vehicle here, you could either go to the canteen or you could head home or whatever, and it varied.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a normal 8 in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
What was the security like to get in and out each day?
Very intense. Very intense. And when you got posted here, you knew that's what you were told to expect. Very tight security. When you came in the morning, anything you brought in, they would normally ask, if you brought a bag in, what's in the bag, you had to show them. If you brought a briefcase in, you had to open it up so they could see what was in the briefcase. Security was very tight. When you left here, it was the same thing. If you were taking a bag out or a briefcase out, they wanted to see what was in it. Understandable. Because they didn't want secrets walking out, and they didn't want problems walking in. So they were just very, very cautious about what happened. Who went in, who went out. If you weren't cleared, you didn't get in.
What about were there any sort of restrictions on what kinds of things you were allowed to say outside of the bunker or say inside of the bunker?
There was a restriction on what you said outside the bunker. You say nothing. Nothing. Not how many people work here, not where you work, how many floors, how you got into the place. Nothing. You say nothing.
So even your family wasn't?
Nope. Nope.
Wow. How did your wife react to? She knew. Did she know you were working in a bunker?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
See, it's under that hill. That's all you know. That's all I could show her. And she come out a couple of times to the mess out here because we had, we had functions in the mess outside here. And she came out to those, dances and barbecues, and there was always a ball game or something going on down in the field behind the mess there. So there was lots of activities around, and the families were invited to attend those. Just you could not come in through the gates.
Okay. When you say the mess outside, so that wasn't inside of the bunker? You didn't have to come inside to get to it?
No, you didn't. There was messes inside here. There was a junior ranks mess. There was a sergeant's mess, sergeant warrant officer's mess, and an officer's mess. And they were inside here. And When they started to have some problems with people drinking, they shut the inside nest down and they moved it to building over by the fence, over towards where the satellite dome is, over in that area there. Excuse me. And then just down below that was the ball diamond, and there was horseshoe pits. There was all kinds of stuff out there.
And did you take advantage of that outside sort of stuff because you lived offsite, or was it mostly for the people who lived here?
For anybody that worked here. And I did take some advantage. Yeah, I made use of some of it. Not that much, but some.
Yeah.
Mainly because with a couple of small kids traveling, you know, they don't want small kids screaming and crying when a ball game was on, you know. So, yeah.
Did you guys just play against each other? Or did this?
Oh no, there was other teams in the area here that would come over and play softball, and the dart league was mainly from the local areas here, like Almont and Dunrobin and places like that. You know, where people would get together from these different areas and make up their own team, and we'd go from one place to another to play against each other.
As long as the guys aren't talking, it's okay. If you were playing against teams who were in the area, how do you think that the town felt about having the bunker here, and how much did people in the town know? Did you ever get a sense of that? Or?
Like any good Irish community, there's two sides. There was the one side who thought it was great because we had the bar over here and they were able to get in. The other side was we polluted the Carp River, we were destroying the Carp River, and we were causing all kinds of damage. And like any good Irish family, there's two sides.
And did they know what sorts of stuff was going on in the bunker, or did they just know it was?
No idea. No idea. Even the people that were building this place a few years before I got here, they had no idea what it was, other than it was supposed to be a communications center.
And when you came into the bunker today and made it past security and that type of thing, how did you find the atmosphere in here was between the various workers and that kind of thing?
Very good. I can only recall, now memory plays tricks on us, but I can only recall a couple of minor incidents. I don't even remember the people who got into the arguments. But for the most part, people got along very well here.
And were people comfortable with one another, or was it work only?
No. When I was here, there was, I think, 24, 26 single guys that were living down in the basement, down on the main floor.
Okay.
They were quartered down there, so.
And did you get to know some of the people working here as well? Like, did you make friends here?
Oh, I had a lot of friends. You know, you make friends everywhere you go in the military, and yeah, I had friends, but real close friends, not real close. You know, people grow up and when they're going to high school, they make close friends, or they're in public school, they make real close friends, and these friendships last for a lifetime. I think, from my experience, none of my friendships lasted that long, although we were very good friends. Missed them when we went our separate ways. But that was just part of the military life.
Did Do you think you knew everyone working in here? Or were there certain
Oh,
people
heavens,
that-
no. No, I didn't know. I probably didn't know half the people that were here. Mainly because they worked in areas that I couldn't get into. Might see them downstairs at lunch or coffee break, but or over in the canteen, but where they worked or what they did, you know.
What was the food like?
My good friend Pub. Oh, yes, the food was excellent. The food was excellent, and there was plenty of it. I don't know if you were aware of it, but normally the normal number of people who worked here in a 24-hour period was something like about 250. And a full complement would run around 500, 550 people. That's a full complement. So when an exercise came up and they had to have fresh rations for 3-4 days at least for 500 people, that's an awful lot of food. And you don't want to throw that food out. So there was lots of very good food to eat. And we ate well. But because of when I was here, because of the military situation, the Cold War, you had to be ready to lock down at any time. And that meant you had to have enough rations to feed 500 people at least for 3, 4, 5 every days, whatever it was that they had to have fresh rations for. I believe somebody said once that there was up to a week. But anyhow, it doesn't matter because you had to have the fresh rations for the first few days anyway. And then after that, it became box lunches. But rather than just take the food, bring the food in, throw it in the garbage and take it out again, they fed us. Might as well use it. It was good. It was good. Nothing like a steak at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're on midnight.
Were you ever here when there was a lockdown?
I was here for one lockdown only.
When was that?
It was just an over a 24-hour type lockdown. And as to the exact, I don't remember the exact date. I really honestly don't. But it was while I was here, there was one 24-hour lockdown, and that was it.
Mm-hmm. Did you know ahead of time that it was going to happen, or
No. And when we got the lockdown, didn't even tell the wife. No.
Really?
No.
So you just didn't go home that night?
Just didn't go home that night.
How?
When it was lifted, after it was over and done with, phoned the wife right away, of course. But I wasn't alone. All the other people that were married were in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How did your wife react to these types of things, like that situation and you working in a bunker?
She was a little leery that this was actual procedure, military procedure, but that's just the way it was. Mm-hmm. And she knew that this place is different. I mean, she grew up in a military family. Her father was in the military, so she knew that the army and the military does some pretty peculiar things at times. And this was a peculiar place to be working. So, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did either of you, I mean, you in particular, but you would know about your wife as well, did either of you have a sense of the reality of like a nuclear attack? I
don't think we really really, really did. I got a sense of it, but this was before I was married, during the Cuban crisis in 1961. I happened to be out in Manitoba at the time, and the bunker out there in Shiloh was not completed at that time either. So, but they needed an above ground or generally available communications center. And at that time, as an operator, they went. That's what they had me there for, was to man the communication center. So I'd take the information and then send it into the locked up area that they had, and went from there. But that was a touchy time, that was.
And so after that, then was there any talk among the people working here or anyone that you knew, really, like neighbors and that kind of thing, of sort of fear or that kind of thing about?
Like I say, I was in Manitoba at the time of the Cuban crisis, so I don't know what the atmosphere was here. But this place was open and operational at the time, fully operational. Nobody would tell you one way or the other, but I would imagine from the operating and procedures that were put in place out west, excuse me, from what happened out west, the same thing as a full lockdown here would have taken place. Perhaps the only thing they wouldn't do is bring the top government officials in. So I don't know.
And by the time that you moved out here to work, was that still a concern for you personally?
No, not really. Not really.
At the time, there were a lot of sort of news stories about the Soviet Union and communism, I imagine. Did you read those any differently because of your work here at the bunker?
A lot of it was, as I recall, a lot of the newspaper and news articles and announcements on the radio and TV, a lot of hype, keep the pot boiling. And I often, no, that's garbage. Leave it go. I was here mainly, the first year and a half that I was attached to here, I wasn't here. I was in Kingston on course, on training. So I came out here in 68. I can't remember for sure. I think it was late 68 or early 69. Anyway, it was late 68 or early 69. And by that time, it was quite a different tone in the politics.
You talked a little bit about your wife being at home and thinking it was a little bit strange and that kind of thing. Did she know about the rules about not being able to bring your family in here?
She was aware.
And how did both of you feel about that?
It was a little uneasy. But like we felt at the time, or the general feeling was, as I remembered, was that if there's going to be a nuclear bomb, whether you're down there or not, there's nothing left outside of it. And it's going to be a whole new world. Chances of survival, if there's ever a bomb, are 0 to almost none. So
And do you talk about your time in the bunker to your one son?
I have 2 sons now.
2 sons. And
1 daughter.
okay, so 3 kids.
Yeah.
And other extended family who are maybe small children now. But how do you explain to them about, or how do you talk about your time at the bunker to them?
My daughter brings our 3 grandsons over here fairly often, so they enjoy going through and seeing the place, and they think it would have been neat to work here. So, but my oldest son came out and he helped me on. He did when we were doing the tours for the library, fundraising for the library. I would take a tour through up to 18, 20 people, but you always had to have the tail man, somebody bring up the rear. And a couple of times my oldest son came with me, and he would be the last man on the group. So, but he thought it was quite a neat place too. Yeah. Would have been different for sure. My youngest son, he's been out here, but he doesn't say much about it, no.
So, because you didn't live in the bunker, you were sort of way out there, but did you get to know other people who lived in the town of Carp, or maybe around where you lived, and how did you talk about your work to them?
The ones that were in favor of this place being here, I got to know and talk to them over in the mess. And they thought it was a great idea. Didn't know what we did. We were just a communications outfit, that was all. As far as the outside world was concerned, that's all we were, was a communication center.
Okay, just a couple more questions. Did you know a lot about Prime Minister Diefenbunker at the time? Did you have an interest?
I should be saying yes, I knew a great deal about him. Especially since he comes from where I lived, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. But I really didn't know him that well. He was a very good criminal lawyer. I knew that. And other than that, I didn't really know that much about him. He was the leader. He became the leader of the Conservative Party. But as a teenager, you're not too keen on politics, for a starter. And then in your early 20s, you don't really particularly give a sweet darn. But the only thing I can remember in my early 20s was I was very, very upset when he scrapped the Avro Arrow, because that would have put the Canadian military, especially the Canadian Air Force, the best in the world, the best equipped in the world. And that was very, very hard for a lot of us to swallow. And when that went, there was a deterioration in the supply of new equipment for all of the armed forces. So we were not thrilled. And I don't believe he got too many military votes after that. You know, because at that time in in the early 60s. Now, I can't remember it. It's not there. I know that we had a very large military when he became prime minister. By the time he was gone, shortly after he was gone, our military was in rapid decline. Didn't have the equipment. People weren't interested in walking around with a stick of wood for a rifle. You know, if you're a soldier, you want a rifle. So the military was in very rapid decline, and then Mr. Trudeau, he really put the skids on things. So, but that was, you know, the motto came in strong and clear. Ours is not the reason why, ours is but to do or die.
How do you feel that affected Canada's role as a military power in the Cold War situation?
We went from having a powerful voice after the Second World War in NATO and in all the Allied forces. We had a very powerful voice, a very strong voice. By the time Trudeau had been in power for a couple of years, we were nothing. There was no voice. Our military had no voice. So it was devastating in a lot of ways. Unfortunately, when I was here along that same line, because of the way the forces were deteriorating, we still had our listening places like Alert and Nunavik and Masset in the Queen Charlotte Islands and Gander, Newfoundland and things like that. We still had those places. And they still needed to be manned with whatever equipment was left over for us. And when I was here in Carp and spent 6 months up in Alert, when I came back, I was drafted off into that circle of military environment, shall we say. And I spent the balance of my career there. I got out in 1980, and the reason I got out was because they were sending me off to another one of those places that I didn't want to go. And with 24 years in the service, I said, I don't want to go, I don't have to go. So I got out. But because I had only a grade 9 education, I was not qualified for a whole lot of great jobs. But the military gave me the training that I needed, and I went to work with a national communication outfit, and I spent another 15 years with them. And it worked out very well. Very beneficial to me. So.
Just like maybe one or two more.
Certainly.
Questions. Because of your time at the bunker, how do you remember reacting when you heard about the fall of the Berlin Wall?
Great. Because it was a colossal pain in the backside for everybody. And because of the military, I had a couple of friends that I worked with here and spent time with in Kingston on course, and they had been stationed over there, and it was really, really tough for them. So when the wall came down, it really changed things for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Why would you say that it's important to remember all of this about the Cold War and your experiences with the bunker here?
Because we have some people who have egos bigger than this building, and they would like to see some of these things happen again because they think they can gain control. That's how I see it. There's always somebody who thinks they're bigger, stronger, smarter. And with egos like that, somebody wants to be the king of the castle. And everybody else their underling. Human nature.
Just to wrap up, do you have any sort of favorite stories or favorite memories about the bunker that you like to tell? Or
Not nothing that really comes to mind. My good friend and pub and I had
you told me a couple stories.
had a few nights, yes. Especially when they had the beer machine there. Slide the bottles in. Pop the tops off.
That was inside of the bunker?
Downstairs. That was one of them. Oh. Well, it was good when I was on midnights and pub was on the night shift on cooking, and I could always get a steak to eat for supper, and of course we could always go at the whistle while the steak was cooking. Yes. Yeah. I in hindsight, it often amazes me that we didn't get in as much trouble as we could have or should have, really, for some of the things that we pulled. But well, it was a great experience. It really was. Would I do it over again? Probably not. Probably not if I had a choice, but but let's face it, one timer makes a great life. We do the fundraising for the library. One of the things that I remember, the first opportunity I got, I whistled down into the lower floor. Make sure there was no empty bottles. They come falling down. There was more than one of them, two of them that were mine. Because you weren't supposed to be bringing in booze ourselves.
Yeah.
That was when the MPs weren't quite so strict. Once they got to know you, they kind of eased off a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So it was something else, that's for sure.